Alrighty, we are back again. It's your boy, it's Mr. Dams with one more video. Man, listen, Marvel Exposed, I've said this before, man. They are in full panic mode, man. We're over here bringing back old heroes who are dead, totally getting rid of Jonathan Majors, it looks like. Let's see what Neurotic got to say about it, alright?
I am Iron Man.
He about to roast it. Nut shots.
Nerdrotic.com.
Aw man, you just hate to see it. Disney Marvel has had yet another bad week.
Yeah. I already know he about to roast
I mean,
it, man.
aside from the parent company's stock
Shares
continuing to
plummeting.
fall, fired Marvel chairman Ike Perlmutter is backing activist investor Nelson Peltz to force his way on the board to force Bob Iger to change or force him out. Disney just got completely roasted by South Park in an episode that's gone insanely viral. There was recently a book written about Marvel airing some of their dirty laundry. The Marvels is projected to be a historic flop. The three most recent clips from the Marvels on the Marvel Entertainment YouTube channel are either
ratioed.
ratioed or ratioed. Then there's that Jonathan Majors trouble. Now, I could be talking about his court case, or I could be talking about his acting.
Ain't that bad, man. Ain't bad at all.
And no one's watching Loki season 2. So no, things haven't been going that well for the
I am.
House of Mouse and its subsidiary
But it's pretty
Marvel.
bad.
But as we like to
Talk
say,
about
with all
daggone,
things concerning Disney, things can always
Star
get
Wars
worse.
too, man.
And they have. This is a partial quote from an article. Marvel is truly fucked. Does it come from bounding into comics? Does it come from a Ryan Kinnell thumbnail? Does it come from one of my videos?
Variety.
No, it comes from Variety. So join
Yosh.
you 875,000 practitioners of common sense and the 40% who haven't subscribed yet. Truly, thank you. Let's talk about the Access Media turning on their masters. And no, this isn't some opinion piece from Variety. It is carpet bombing Marvel. It is an expose that is so important to them. It's their banner on their Twitter page. Crisis at Marvel. Jonathan Majors backup plans. The Marvels reshoots. Reviving original Avengers and more issues revealed. And look at the art on this article. They went full YouTuber with the red down arrow. And they also ask, is Marvel in trouble? Disney's biggest hitmaker will need to flex its muscles to overcome superhero fatigue, and the Marvels won't be the answer. Well, to answer their question, hell yes, they're in trouble because the MCU killed the MCU, and now we're in phase apathy. Now, I just made a video.
I agree. Man, listen. Replacing all your original heroes with females is some of the stupidest nonsense that you could possibly do. I'm not gonna say that most comic book fans are males, right? But the hero story is kind of, you know what I'm saying? It's just that you have a plethora of great female characters that are already in the comics, man, that you don't use. Instead, oh no, I'm gonna turn Iron Man girl. No, I'm gonna turn Cap woman. You know what I mean? I'm gonna turn Hulk, She-Hulk. It's too much. It just needs to stop. Black Panther, obviously, you know what I mean? Like every single one of them. Hawkeye, man. Now that I think about it, Thor, all the originals are replaced by women, and I don't know whose idea that was. That's stupid. And if they were trying to go to the all new, all different realm, that was terrible in the comics, man. So an on-screen adaptation of that, I'm sure it's not gonna work in the same way. You know what I mean? But let's continue.
Video as to why Marvel failed. You can check it out right here. I also have an extensive playlist that chronicles its demise over the last few
My man going crazy.
years. Now, the reason we're going over this is because there is some new information. There's some information that confirms some of the stuff I've said. And yeah, it's a victory lap because guess what? The fans were right all along. This past September, a group of Marvel creatives, well, I'm going to have to stop you right there, Variety, because there are no longer any creatives at
there.
Marvel, including studio chief Kevin Feige, assembled in Palm Springs for the studio annual retreat. Most years, the
Probably was
vibe
like, this
would
ain't
have been
working.
confident, even cocky, given how the premier superhero brand owned by Disney since 2009, that's when Marvel died, has remade the entertainment business in its image, and boy, does the entertainment business now regret that. But this occasion was angst-ridden. Everyone at Marvel was reeling from a series of disappointments on screen, a legal scandal involving one of its biggest stars, and a question about the viability of the studio's ambitious strategy to extend the brand beyond movies into streaming. Now, apparently, the most pressing issue is Jonathan Majors. Now, I believe the man is innocent until proven guilty.
I believe he's innocent too.
He deserves his day in court, and Disney has shown him something they didn't show someone like Gina Carano: patience. The actor insists that he is the victim, but the damage to his reputation and the chance he could lose the case has forced Marvel to reconsider its plans. Never mind the court case, Disney Marvel should be reconsidering their plans based on this.
And that's the gambit.
Or this.
They will take everything.
And this.
Time is everything. Each and every one of us.
Oh, bro.
This guy stinks!
At a gathering in Palm Springs, executives discussed backup plans, including pivoting to another comic book adversary like Doctor Doom. And yes, a lot of us have been asking for that, but unfortunately, Marvel would probably have him fighting an all-female Fantastic Four or all-female Young Avengers. Not interested. But making any shift would carry its own headaches. Majors was already a big presence in the MCU, including as the scene-stealing antagonist in February's massive flop, Ant-Man and Wasp: Quantumania, and has been positioned as the franchise's next big thing in this season of
That was a pretty bad movie. And Ant-Man beat him? Come on, man. I mean, so far they're showing that he's not the big bad because he's died in every single series he's been in. So, let's see what happens.
Loki, particularly in the finale, which airs on November 9th and sets up Kang as the titular star of the 5th Avengers film in 2026, which is probably soon to be retitled. And let's keep in mind, Jonathan Majors' Kang was only chosen to be the big bad in the multiversal saga based on the hype from the awful Loki season 1. This comes from the book The Reign of Marvel Studios. According to one Marvel source, Kang was not originally intended to be the overarching villain of the multiversal saga. The decision to elevate him to a Thanos-level threat was based on the positive buzz actor Jonathan Majors generated for the role. Marvel is truly fucked with the whole Kang angle, and I might add so much more, says one top deal maker who has seen the final Loki episode, and they haven't had an opportunity to rewrite until very recently because of the WGA strike, but I don't see a path to how they move forward with him. Disney Marvel, just in case you're out there listening, Jonathan Majors' Kang, while being a horrible villain, is the least of your problems. Beyond the bad press for Majors, the brain trust at Marvel is also grappling with the November release of The Marvels, a sequel to the 2019 blockbuster Captain Marvel, where Captain Marvel was demoted in her own sequel that has been plagued with lengthy reshoots and now appears likely to underwhelm at the box office, and we just happen to have some news on that. The original domestic opening weekend estimates for The Marvels were between $75 and $80 million. Since then, they have been adjusted down just a little bit to $45 to $50 million.
Just a little bit.
The Marvel machine was pumping out a lot of sewage. I'm sorry, it said content. Did it get to the point where there was just too much and they were burning people out on superheroes? It's possible. Possible. It's not only possible, it's already
the reason.
happened. Some of us recognize that Marvel would fail when they started the MCU years ago. When they moved away from their core heroes like Captain America, Iron Man, stopped telling good stories.
I called that out the minute it happened in Endgame. When I did that long lady shot, I was like, literally was my face in the movie theater. However, great movie. I'm glad they kept it on the heroes, but man, ever since then, shit is not hitting the same. It's really not.
Stories about good characters and started pushing a message through identity. As a matter of fact, they unintentionally get to a great example from Wall Street analyst Eric Handler, who covers Disney. The more you do, the tougher it is to maintain quality. Yeah, no shit. They tried experimenting with breaking in some new characters like Shang-Chi and the Eternals with mixed results. With budgets as big as these, you need home runs. And why did they have these mixed results that were actually flops? Well, as far as Shang-Chi is concerned, the character doesn't look or act anything like he does in the comic, and they cast a thin-skinned stock photography model who doesn't like it when YouTubers point out his film flopped. Because this is the Shang-Chi we got, and this is what he's supposed to look like in the comic books. This is the Eternals we got, and this is what they're supposed to look like in the comic books. And I might add, the Eternals were specifically chosen so they could race and gender swap everyone. Feige would specifically address the Eternals race and gender swapping almost every single character from the comics when Variety's Kate Arthur asked, Eternals expands the MCU in terms of representation with its large international cast.
Side note, that movie was terrible too, man. And it was really slow, man. Just when you see like just outward woke stuff, just jamming it in your face at the movies. I see a lot of that stuff in the Spider-Man too. I am enjoying that game immensely, but however, it's a lot of woke jammed in stuff in there.
Cast. Its first LGBTQ was the plus bigot superhero. I know some of these things are baked into the Eternals, but how many of those expansive ideas came from Chloe? Kevin answered, well, the notion of switching up the genders, sexualities, and ethnicities of the characters from the comics was baked in initially. That was part of what Nate Moore was really advocating for in moving Eternals to the top of our list for us to start working on. In other words, prioritizing the message over a good story. That's going to be a bit of a theme here, and of course, it's something that Variety completely leaves out. The Marvels, which opens in theaters on November 10th, will struggle to get past the infield, at least by Marvel's outsized standards. The movie, which cost $250 million, actually the budget was reported at $270 million a year ago, not counting the reshoots and marketing, and sees Brie Larson reprising her role as Captain Marvel, is tracking to open 75 to 80 million, and now we know it's much lower than that, far below the 185 million Doctor Strange Mom took in domestically in its debut weekend last year. We all know about the extensive problems with the Marvels. Again, Brie Larson was demoted in her own sequel and then surrounded by a shield of diverse women, the ballooning budget due to the multiple reshoots leading to the multiple delays, but we didn't know this. The eyebrows were raised again when director Nia DaCosta began working on another film while the Marvels was still in post-production. The filmmaker moved to London earlier this year to begin prepping for her Tessa Thompson drama, Hedda. A representative for DaCosta declined to comment. But this is not unusual for Disney Marvel because, as I've told you in previous videos, directors are not hired, they are cast, which was exposed years ago when Lucrecia Martel turned down Black Widow after Marvel told her, don't worry about the action scenes. Companies are interested in female filmmakers, but they still think action scenes are for male directors, said the Zama director. I mean, are they wrong? I don't know. I'll report it. You decide. But they aren't wrong here. If you're directing a $250 million movie, it's kind of weird for the director to leave with a few months to go. Now, I reported a couple of months back that The Marvels was the lowest test-screened film in the history of the MCU. Some told me that those test screenings never happened. Well, then there's this. Disney employees and their friends and families took the uncharacteristic step of holding a public test screening in Texas. The audience gave the film middling reviews. I think middling is being generous. But not to worry, because Disney Marvel is saved thanks to the genius intellect of the Disney marketing department. Call this a Hail Mary, but I think it just might work. A cat live stream.
Have you any idea how many cats there are in this country?
No, I don't have those, no.
Now, I have here a study from Hampstead University which shows us that cats and dogs are beginning to watch television. Now, if these scientists are right, you should start programming right now. Within 20 years, they could become steady viewers.
Programming for cats.
That'll get them flocking to the theater. Well, anyway, the article then goes extensively into problems we already knew. The overtaxed VFX teams that led to the ballooning budgets, that led to all the reshoots. And of course, the overtaxed VFX teams have voted to unionize, and they're also blaming the shoddy writing. The so-called bad VFX we see because of half-baked scripts, says one person involved with She-Hulk. That is not Victoria, that is Kevin, and even above Kevin. Of course, we know Victoria Alonso was fired and they called her a scapegoat, but she did publicly call out her CEO at an Alphabet event, which according to the book, The Reign of Marvel Studios, is really the reason she got fired. And all this was happening while, I'll quote the article, Marvel was bleeding money. Now, successful corporations or subsidiaries aren't usually associated with bleeding money, with a single episode of She-Hulk costing some $25 million, dwarfing the budget of a final season episode of HBO's Game of Thrones, but without the similar zeitgeist bang. No, it was a fart in the wind like most everything else from Marvel Phase 4 on, and if you had just set $25 million on fire and filmed it, it would have been more entertaining. There are signs that the flood of product, that's what they call it, and that's exactly what it is leading people to tune out. I'm not prepared to call it a permanent fall. I am, because it's already happened, but based on the numbers that go with Marvel podcasts, Marvel-based articles, friends who do Marvel-based video coverage, all of these numbers are significantly down, says Joan Robinson, co-author of New York Times bestseller MCU, The Reign of Marvel Studios, and she's not wrong. That's what happens when apathy sets in. What Disney Marvel and Disney Star Wars and Disney and all of Hollywood have completely forgotten is angry fans are fans that care, but at some point they stop. A slavish adherence to the message is the source of all of these problems. They've led to lazy production, bad hiring practices, poor writing. It just so happens that Variety gives us unintentionally a great example of this. As public criticism mounts, Feige is pulling the plug on scripts and projects that aren't working. Case in point, the Blade reboot with Mahershala Ali signed on for the eponymous role of a vampire. Things look promising for a 2023 release date, but the project has gone through at least 5 writers, 2 directors, and 1 shutdown 6 weeks before production. One person familiar with the script permutations says the story at one point morphed into a narrative led by women and filled with life lessons. Blade was relegated to the 4th lead. A bizarre idea considering that the studio had hired 2-time Oscar winner Ali on board. But is it really that bizarre, or is it very consistent with the MCU? Let's see, you'll have to forgive me because I'm just gonna go off the top of my head. In Black Panther, he was always surrounded by 2 or 3 women. That cringe female power scene in Endgame.
The funny thing about the nega bands on the TV show is that they're actually meant to be a big callback to the OG version of Captain Marvel, the very first version, who was a man called Mar-Vell, who did appear during the Captain Marvel movie in the MCU, but he was played by Annette Bening, so they changed the character just a little bit. What? What the fuck? But he was played by Annette Bening, so they changed the character just a little bit.
But that was just the beginning. Things get much worse. Shang-Chi surrounded by 2 or 3 women. Arguably, the women are more masculine than the titular character. The Eternals took the main character from the comic book Icarus and turned him into a villain so they could have a female lead. In Doctor Strange Mom, Doctor Strange is surrounded by 2 women in pursuit of a woman. In Thor Love and Thunder, Thor is surrounded by 2 women. In Wakanda Forever, unfortunately, the male character died. Of course, women most affected, and then that male character is replaced by a female character who is constantly surrounded by 2 or 3 women. On the D+ shows, Loki was a bait and switch for a female Loki. Hawkeye was a bait and switch for a female Hawkeye. Moon Knight was saddled with a female character called the Scarlet Scarab so they can have an Egyptian superhero. And She-Hulk, the one actual popular female character from the comics, was turned into a cringe mess that made the fans the villain. Honorable mentions in Falcon and Winter Soldier, Captain Black Falcon America could not defeat Freckle Jesus and had to be saved by a woman. Doctor Strange ultimately had to be saved by America Chavez. Moon Knight had to be saved by a woman. Hawkeye had to be saved by Kate Bishop after he couldn't defeat a deaf superhero with one leg. But to be fair, Echo did go on to defeat the Kingpin, and Hawkeye did get his ass kicked by 4'2" Florence Pugh. I'm sure I'm missing some, but I think you get the point. So Blade being surrounded by a bunch of women and being the fourth lead in his own movie is very consistent with the MCU. And if you don't think it's a slavish adherence to the message, well, please allow me to read you a couple of paragraphs from the Reign of Marvel Studios as it concerns the backlash to Captain Marvel. Even if they being you and I the fan, didn't know the vagaries of Marvel Entertainment's corporate politics, they were siding with Ike Perlmutter and the defunct Creative Committee. That defunct Creative Committee included noted Trump supporters Brian Michael Bendis and Joe Quesada, who had lost the long war to keep Marvel Studios focused on male and white characters. That is fundamentally untrue, but let's go ahead with the narrative that clearly comes from Kevin Feige. Marvel Studios under Feige and Alonso and other leaders recognized that its audience was the hundreds of millions of people, almost half of them women, according to a 2021 poll by Morning Consult. I'm glad that somebody actually paid a company to determine that half of your potential audience on planet Earth is half the population. Genius. Who love the MCU? Not a small but vocal coterie of cranks and trolls who campaigned against MCU movies with prominent female characters like the Eternals and Black Widow, both which flopped in 2021 as representing the decline of Marvel and the rise of the MCU.
But you have heard of me.
So I'll ask the question, if the MCU isn't a thing, why is it getting mentioned in this book? Sounds to me like Kevin Feige got a hold of the Panderstone. The studio made movies starring women and people of color with increasing frequency, and in the 2022 TV show She-Hulk Attorney at Law, Marvel even had a hero, Jen Walters, battle her male online critics. And how did that work out for her, and how is that working out for Marvel right now? And now it's all falling apart just like we said it would, and this is leading to absolute Disney Marvel desperation. Sources say there have been talks to bring back the original gang for an Avengers movie. This would include reviving Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man and Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow. By the way, Scarlett Johansson has said in the past that she would never come back. We'll have to see, both of whom were killed off in Endgame. Again, this is obvious desperation because it will not fix the overall problem. Sure, if you get the gang back together for one more movie, it will do well, but it will simply be a gimmick, a stopgap, a band-aid, but the Marvel Cinematic Universe is still dead. And yes, there's Deadpool 3 out there, which is probably going to get delayed a year, and who knows if that's going to be good. They could reboot the Fantastic Four, but we all know instead of looking like this, it'll look like this. And then there is a sentence in this article that gives us reason to not be that excited about the X-Men. The Fox editions give Feige an opportunity to reimagine the X-Men franchise. The article ends by stating writing the Marvel obituary would be ill-advised. And that statement is completely wrong. This would be the perfect time to start writing Marvel's obituary, and many are starting to do that. You've noticed that the Access Media has smelled blood in the water, and it's now safe to criticize Disney. Turns out what was ill-advised was giving Kevin Feige complete control of everything at Marvel. I'll remind you that Kevin Feige has been in complete control of Marvel since 2019, 2020. That includes merchandising, publishing, and Marvel Studios, and they've all gone downhill. I'd say it was ill-advised to bypass great storytelling from the past to get to the more modern books that prioritize identity over character and message over story. I would say it was ill-advised to get rid of your core characters and replace them with a bunch of people nobody cares about. I would say it was ill-advised to alienate your fan base and then make an enemy of them, especially when they were right all along. And now the Access Media is piling on, and they're not just late late to the party. The maid already showed up, cleaned up, took home all the drugs and alcohol. The parents came back home, sold the house, and moved to Nevada. So we are winning. The great correction is happening, and the universe will unfold as it should. But unfortunately, we had to lose a lot to get here. Star Wars, Star Trek, Doctor Who, and Marvel. And now Disney Marvel is so desperate, they've made a profit out of Joe Rogan.
Is the door to Iron Man totally closed? Because I don't believe it is.
Oh.
You guys can go through time now. You can go, you already opened up that door.
Well, let me ask you the question. If I pick the jersey back up and put it on, wouldn't you feel a little bit like, oh,
No.
crap?
No.
Oh.
Here's what I think.
All right.
They go through a few semi-lackluster Avengers movies without you.
Nerderotic.com.
If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you heard, I thank you for listening this long. I will see you in the next video.